Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, did Texas National Guard soldiers break espionage laws? We dig in with a recent investigation. Plus, drug-related deaths in the Navy. Learn how fentanyl is infiltrating a major Navy training base. Also, a heavy lift helicopter lands a hefty contract. And what's in the box? West Point opens a nearly 200-year-old time capsule found on its grounds. Stick around to see what was inside. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. An investigation by Military Times and the Texas Tribune has unveiled potential violations in the Texas National Guard's intelligence activities on the border. The acts can have far-reaching effects on the Guard and its mission. For more, we spoke to Military Times reporter Davis Wanke.
An 18-month investigation we did with our partners at the Texas Tribune has found that the Texas National Guard was forced to disband the Intelligence Directorate, part of Operation Lone Star, its state-run border mission. That move happened after a series of internal whistleblowers reported that the intelligence personnel on the border mission were violating long-standing federal rules against state-run spy operations, and that another team from that group might have violated federal secrecy laws when they shared classified FBI intelligence with their colleagues on the border. The upshot of this is that there are 4 officers who currently face interim administrative discipline in the incident, and 2 of them spoke with us to say, hey, we raised our concerns about this through the chain of command, and we were told to proceed anyways. We should not be the ones held accountable here. They're calling for the 2 people who were commanding the mission at the time, Brigadier General Moni Ulis and Colonel Kevin Boats, who has since retired, to also face some form of accountability if any rules were indeed broken. Investigators found the Texans violated rules against state-run spy operations when 2 officers used the WhatsApp application to secretly infiltrate chat groups that had migrants and smugglers and monitor them and mine them for names and information and other forms of intelligence to help Operation Lone Star's leaders understand what smugglers were capable of, what they intended to do, and when and where migrants intended to cross the border. The Inspector General found that that was an unauthorized foreign intelligence operation, which is not allowed for guardsmen when they're in state status. Operation Lone Star is a state-run, state-funded border mission by the Texas National Guard that the state's governor, Greg Abbott, launched in March of 2021 in an effort to combat human smuggling, drug trafficking, and other criminal issues at the Texas-Mexico border. Abbott and his fellow Republicans have been saying that they're doing this mission just because the Biden administration is not upholding its duty to protect the border. And as Abbott faced increased political pressure from rivals in the GOP that were trying to run to his right in the Texas gubernatorial primary in 21, he rapidly expanded the border mission. And that came at a cost for the soldiers assigned to it. As we've previously reported with our partners at the Tribune, thousands of guardsmen were involuntarily mobilized on relatively short notice, with some learning only 48 hours beforehand that they needed to put their lives down for a year or longer and report to the border. In this case, because Operation Lone Star is a pseudo-military mission that more or less has an enemy in the drug cartels on the other side of the border. The Texas Guard leaders wanted to see military-style intelligence out of intelligence personnel who, legally speaking, aren't given their intelligence gathering authorities while on state duty. That gray area in the rule book and a lack of planning that meant that a rule book was not codified or finalized before these troops hit the border really led to mass confusion within the Texas Military Department over what regulations applied to whom and when on intelligence gathering restrictions. When I spoke with troops who had knowledge of this mission, who were our sources for this story, a lot of them held this sentiment where they experienced this pressure to find a way to get the information that their commanders wanted, while straining against the constraints of the rules that handcuffed them from their usual ways of doing it, say if they were in Iraq or Afghanistan. And one of my sources actually told me that everyone wanted to pretend that this border mission was like deploying to Iraq in 2003. Everybody wanted to do Army stuff. They wanted to do it by the book and structure it like an Army headquarters and an Army mission. And so you have to have your intel directorate doing intel things. But the thing is, and my source emphasized this, Operation Lone Star, because it's on state authority, is legally speaking not Army stuff. And that distinction was really lost on a lot of leaders who were being sent to the border by their governor because of their role as the National Guard, as a military component who has to answer to state authority when the time comes. As for the team that allegedly spilled classified FBI information, it appears to have been information from an FBI intelligence summary that was rolled into just a summary product that a two-person team embedded at the FBI's El Paso field office passed back to their colleagues on the border. The purported violation was caught by state intelligence oversight officials, who then immediately launched into an investigation of the incident. The bottom line here is that unprecedented missions create unprecedented problems. We've seen this pattern with Operation Lone Star, with the way that pay was broken, with the way that living conditions were broken, with the way that its purchasing order system was broken and potentially contributed to a lack of life-saving devices before a soldier drowned trying to save 2 migrants in April of last year. And now, as we've revealed with our partners at the Texas Tribune, it's had unprecedented consequences for intelligence personnel assigned there. Whether they should have been more cautious, despite pressure from their commanders, is a question for others to make judgment on. But what we found shows that the lack of bureaucratic preparedness and the lack of clarity over what using the National Guard in this manner on state authority would look like has had far-reaching consequences.
And now for headlines from across the services. In a tragic week for the Marine Corps, 2 aircraft crashes took the lives of 4 service members. 3 Marines died August 27th when their MV-22 Osprey crashed in Australia during a multinational training exercise called Predator's Run. The drill included the militaries of Australia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and East Timor. There were 20 injured survivors who were transported to a hospital in the Australian city of Darwin. The 3 Marines killed in the crash were 29-year-old Captain Eleanor Bowe, 21-year-old Corporal Spencer Collard, and 37-year-old Major Tobin Lewis. And on August 24th, a Marine pilot died in an FA-18D Hornet crash in California. Major Andrew Metler was the only person aboard the jet when it crashed near the Marine base in Miramar. Metler was part of Marine All-Weather Fighter Attack Squadron 224, based in South Carolina. For updates on these stories, please visit MarineCorpsTimes.com. Well, Be All You Can Be is back again. Following a March relaunch of the well-known Army recruiting campaign that quickly got mired in its spokesman sinking into some legal trouble, the Army is back yet again with another swing. Out with a new series of ads called First Steps, the updated videos aim to deliver a, quote, authentic portrayal of what it means to be a young soldier. The ads show soldiers arriving for boot camp and going through some of the early trials, getting a first patch, and firing a weapon for the first time. The Army, as well as the other services, have been facing recruiting challenges recently, with each branch trying its own methods to increase numbers. Good luck out there, recruiters. Next, what's in the box? Officials at West Point staged an elaborate event to unveil the contents of a nearly 200-year-old time capsule recently found on Academy grounds. After first x-raying the box to make sure there was something in there and avoid an infamous Geraldo opening Capone's vault scenario, ask your sergeant major if you don't know, they brought out the item to great fanfare in a live event. All kinds of officials and experts gathered in the room to see the unveiling, and people from all over the country tuned in to watch with breathless anticipation. Then, after curators wiggled free the lid with a specialized tool, the big moment had arrived and the top of the box came off.
What do we see?
Nothing quite yet. Yeah. I just set it to one side over there. There you go. Oh. It's empty.
Oof, you can just feel the awkwardness. Curators open the capsule with hundreds of people watching, only to find nothing inside. Zero, basically some dirt.
Later, curators did find one thing in the time capsule, a coin from the era, but that was it.
The object is believed to have been buried in 1828, prior to the Civil War and just 26 years after the Academy was founded. Soldiers like a good prank, so maybe this was just some troops playing the long game. When we return, we hear about fentanyl deaths on a major Navy training base. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. 2 sailors in the past 3 years at the Navy's Bootcamp hub on Lake Michigan have died of overdoses involving fentanyl, and other sailors face charges in connection with the drug. Navy Times reporter Jeff Zazulowicz has been looking at the infiltration of fentanyl at the facility, known as Naval Station Great Lakes. Here's some of what he found.
Renegade home! Renegade home! My friends, they will say!
As America continues to grapple with a fentanyl crisis, our investigation found that at least 2 sailors have suffered fentanyl-related deaths since 2020 on the base that houses the Navy's boot camp. The base is known as Naval Station Great Lakes, just north of Chicago. We've also found out that 2 sailors are facing court-martial and criminal charges this fall in connection to one of those 2 fentanyl-related sailor deaths. We've also uncovered that since 2020, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service has launched at least 5 investigations into drug smuggling aboard the base. Basically illicit controlled substances being snuck onto the installation. But NCIS has been looking into for the past few years the smuggling of things like fentanyl, cocaine, LSD, Xanax, and other drugs onto the base. We haven't received all the records we've requested from NCIS at this point, but the ones we have received so far indicate that service members told special agents that these narcotics are being sent via the U.S. mail or in repackaged food containers. And to be clear, our investigation does not show that young Americans going through boot camp are the ones obtaining these drugs or suffering fentanyl-related deaths. The cases that we are tracking are graduates of the boot camp. They are junior sailors, all in their early 20s and a very low rank. After you graduate from boot camp at Naval Station Great Lakes there are a number of follow-on training schools that are hosted at the base. So several of the sailors involved in these deaths or these alleged crimes had graduated boot camp and were now kind of entering into various stages of the training pipeline. Great Lakes is not the only base or unit or aspect of the military that is suffering its share of America's ongoing fentanyl crisis. Fentanyl was involved in 174 overdose cases in the military from 2017 to 2021, with fatal fentanyl doses more than doubling during that span. That's according to Defense Department data that was released in February. Meanwhile, in civilian America, more than 150 people are dying each day from overdose of synthetic opioids like fentanyl, according to the CDC. So Great Lakes and the sailors there are not suffering through this crisis in a vacuum or alone by any means. The Navy has yet to answer a lot of questions about the fentanyl issue at Naval Station Great Lakes, but we here at Navy Times plan to stay on the story as long as it takes. If you have any personal information or knowledge about what went on there, feel free to reach out to me. And for now, this is Jeff Zazulowicz with Navy Times.
And now for Defense Dollars. A heavy lift helicopter lands a hefty contract. The Navy awarded its largest contract yet for the CH-53K King Stallion. The contract with Lockheed Martin's Sikorsky for 35 aircraft comes at $2.77 billion. While the Marine Corps is the primary user of the helicopters, 8 of them are headed to the Israeli Air Force. Sikorsky President Paul Lemo said the contract will provide the U.S. Marine Corps with, quote, transformative 21st century technologies. Deliveries will begin in 2026. Israel previously purchased 4 aircraft in 2022 under a foreign military sales agreement. The helicopter will support the Israeli Air Force's Special Operations Program, among other missions. Israel signed on to buy the 12 aircraft now on contract and has an option to buy 6 more. The Marine Corps has a program of record for 200 aircraft. And the Navy announced more than $1 billion in contracts to buy parts and equipment for the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. The Pentagon announced that Lockheed received a $347 million firm fixed price modification to a previously awarded contract for F-35 helmet-mounted display system for the Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force. And on Tuesday, the Navy awarded Lockheed another modification to a previously awarded contract worth up to $607 million to buy long lead time materials, parts, and components to build 173 F-35s for foreign military sales customers and non-U.S. Defense Department participants. The Pentagon also announced Pratt & Whitney, a subsidiary of RTX, formerly known as Raytheon Technologies, had received a contract modification valued at more than $59 million to procure advanced hardware for the F-35's F-135 engines. That contract will support F-35s around the services and around the world. The Pentagon's announcement on the helmet contract said Lockheed will carry out the work in Fort Worth, Texas, where the firm runs its main F-35 factory, and is expected to be done by December 2026. The guided missile destroyer Zumwalt is getting a high-speed upgrade. The DDG-1000 recently arrived at Pascagoula, Mississippi, to be serviced by Ingalls Shipbuilding. The Navy says it will begin the process of installing hypersonic missile tubes, also known as Conventional Prompt Strike Weapon System. The Navy expects the process to take 2 years. The ship was commissioned in 2016 and features 80 advanced vertical launch cells for missiles, including the Tomahawk for land-based targets up to 1,000 miles away, the evolved Sea Sparrow missile to defend itself, and even missiles that target submarines, appropriately named the Vertical Launch Anti-Submarine Rockets. And that's it from around the defense industry. When we return, our personal finance expert gives you tips on buying a car. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives you tips on buying a car.
If you're looking for a new car after seeing the prices, you may have decided to hit the brakes. Car prices have been at record highs, but according to Yahoo Finance, oversupply will likely drive down the prices on new cars later this year. While the future is looking better, if you're in the market right now, don't stress. You just need to be a savvy shopper. Prep for your purchase before you search online or visit the dealership. Know how much you can afford, not just the monthly payment, but the whole shebang. Gas, insurance, maintenance, and registration. Then use an affordability calculator online to figure out how much you can reasonably afford in a monthly payment. If you're still a go for the car, it's time to make sure you're getting a great value. Check out Kelley Blue Book and Edmunds online to see reviews of cars that best fit your lifestyle. For used cars, it's important to know their history, so get the Carfax report. Some lenders will even give you a free one. Once you've found your car, get pre-approved so you can show a dealer you're serious and you're in control. Then stick to your budget. Yes, it can be just that easy to get behind the wheel of your new ride on your terms.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, dust off those binos and check out Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps Times.com, as well as DefenseNews.com. And to be the most up-to-date airman on the flight line, sign up for our Early Bird Brief newsletter, compiled each morning to bring you the latest headlines. It's also an audio. Check out the podcast version out each weekday wherever you get your podcasts. And if social media is where you get your open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. When we come back, a look at how Ukrainian combat veterans blinded during the fighting are working to heal and begin again. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. The war in Ukraine has seen a steady stream of wounded troops maimed by modern weapons, trying to restart lives following their days in combat. For those whose injuries include being blinded, the readjustment can be hard. But a group in the western Ukrainian city of Rivne is helping troops work their way back. Veteran Dennis Abdulin, one of the men attending the rehabilitation camp, described the blast that cost him his vision.
Мина легла прям 4-5 метров за спиной. Нас 5 тогда положило сразу. Все, что вспомнил, вспышку, я сознание не терял, помню то я все, как меня тянули в подвал на покрывале. Пробило голову и вспышка была яркая. Мне показалось, что у меня из глаз огонь вылетел. Потому я сразу понял, что я уже без глаз остался.
Participants in the program learn daily tasks like making meals and navigating city streets. And spouses are invited to train with loved ones, donning blindfolds to try to help them understand what the veterans are experiencing.
Було важко, тому що і з ложечки кормить, і не можна було його залишити. Бо спочатку ще я могла вийти, а потім ти куди? Тільки не йди, недовго.
27-year-old Ivan Soroka, a Ukrainian soldier, was also wounded in combat.
Вибух, я відразу втратив зір, мене відкинуло вибуховою хвилею. Я вже розумів по відчуттям, що помираю, лежу в хвилини десь 2, потім зрозумів, що ні, хтось мене не відпускає туди.
Soroka said internal motivation was his key to recovery.
Неможливих речей в цьому світі просто не існує. Є або лінь, або небажання. Тому потрібно вставати, брати себе в руки і працювати над собою.
Organizers added that the rehabilitation program was aimed at giving the veterans back some of their original independence.
Нашою метою є не перевчити їх, не змінити їх, а просто дати їм шанс стати незалежними.
And that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.